connection. I'll talk about it tomorrow when I get to give a teaching in the morning. But it's my pleasure to invite, yes, Yonatan and Diana, who are incredible leaders in our, so I'm going to ask you guys to pick up the mics and bring them closer to you, incredible leaders in our environmental response in Congregation Har Hashem and the Boulder community and how we can respond to the climate difficulties. And so thank you so much for teaching us and for making a difference in our community. So bring those microphones nice and close to you, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Holly. And thank you to Marsha and Jeff for the beautiful music leading us in it. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for the invitation to give this Dvar Torah, some words of Torah. Diana and I would like to share some thoughts about the Parsha, the Torah portion that we read this week. We're still very early in the cycle of yearly readings. This is the second reading, the second Parsha of the year. The first Parsha, Bereshit, got us from the story of creation up through the generations leading to the birth of Noah. God then sees deep wickedness in humanity and decides to destroy it all. And our portion this week begins with Noah and the flood. It begins, Ele toldot Noach, Noach ish tzadik tamim haya b'dorotav. This is the story of Noah. Noah was a righteous, pure man in his generation. As we know, God inundates the earth with water 40 days and 40 nights, but God saves Noah and enough of the other creatures for the earth to begin again. It's hard to read the story of Noah and the flood these days and not think of recent flooding intensified by climate change. Those of us who were here in Boulder in 2013 have seen the kind of devastation that can be wrought by floods. The biblical story marks the day when the rains began. It was the 600th year of Noah's life in the second month on the 17th of the month. And many of us remember the day when the rain started to fall in 2013. Increased temperatures due to our emission of carbon and other greenhouse gases lead to more intense storms with greater rainfall and, ironically, also to longer periods of drought. The extreme weather we have experienced is unprecedented in our lifetime and in many generations before. But what can we learn from the Torah portion? Are there lessons that are relevant to us today? One of my undergraduate professors had a method for interpreting texts that I think is helpful. His name was David Lewin, and I continue to read his material today. So he says, first you read the text, or in my field of music theory, you listen to the song until you get to know it well. Then you set the text or the song aside and you summarize it in your own words. Finally, you come back to the text and see if there are discrepancies between your summary and what the text actually says. Such discrepancies are good entry points for further study, Lewin says, and indeed they are. Do you remember the rainbow after the flood? If we were to summarize the story of the rainbow, we might say that God creates the rainbow as a promise to Noah and future generations that there will never be a flood like that again. This is basically correct. But as I read the Parsha this week, I noticed something else. There's a discrepancy between this summary and what the text says. The rainbow is as much a sign for God as it is for the earth and living beings. God says, quote, "When I bring clouds over the earth, the rainbow will be seen among the clouds. I will then recall the covenant that exists between me, you, and every living soul in all flesh. V'zacharti et briti. I will recall the covenant," God says. So God needs to be reminded. The Israeli author Yehuda Amichai writes, quote, "The Jewish people read Torah aloud to God all year long, a portion a week, like Scheherazade, who told stories to save her life. By the time Simchat Torah rolls around, God forgets, and they can begin again. Now, God has forgotten, and we read again. So rainbows are beautiful. Reading the weekly portion is good. But what would it take in our age to truly remind God of the covenant with Noah? I think it will take more than words. It will take action. We need to show that we ourselves are treating the earth that is our home with the kind of respect that God chooses after the flood. God says to Noah, quote, "As long as the earth lasts, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night, shall never again cease to exist." The seasons are now being disrupted due to our own pollution in the atmosphere. We need to reduce and eliminate carbon pollution and other greenhouse gases as fast as possible so that the seasons can continue to exist. This, I think, is how we remind God of the covenant.
So where do we go from here as a Jewish community? I imagine us right now feeling how the people around Noah felt as the rain began to fall, realizing that they had no protection against the coming floods, and seeing Noah and his family, masters of preparation and resilience, sailing safely away. The sense of grief, anxiety, and loss can be paralyzing, as every day we read of a new climate disaster. And in the words of Catherine Hayhoe, chief scientist of the Nature Conservancy, climate change is not only an environmental issue, it's a health issue, a food issue, an economic issue, a national security issue, and a humanitarian issue that affects the people who've done the least to contribute to it. But Jewish tradition has always emphasized action as the antidote to despair. Jewish wisdom teaches that it is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. So what are the courageous actions? How is the Jewish community showing up for this crisis? Moshe Kornfeld, the leader of Colorado Jewish Climate Action, writes, "The responsibility to engage in climate justice work is personal, communal, and political. Each of us must commit to climate action. This means learning and talking about climate change with our family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. You might have noticed us doing this. And petitioning for the structural reforms we need to transition toward a green future in this country. We must also use the Jewish community as an organizing base for climate activism and action. Right now is a key moment for significant action on climate change at the federal level. Congress has set itself a new deadline of October 31st to pass both the infrastructure bill and the recovery package. It's important to understand that the infrastructure bill focuses on improving resilience and mitigating the impacts of severe weather and natural disasters that we've already been experiencing, like the 2013 flood. It's the ark building strategy. The recovery package, also called the reconciliation bill or the Build Back Better budget, focuses on combating the underlying drivers and reducing the long-term impacts of climate change. It's the covenantal rainbow strategy to protect the earth for future inhabitants. The Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, the RAC, in coordination with multiple other groups, which includes Jewish Earth Alliance, the group Dayenu, which is a Jewish voice for climate action, and the Jewish Action Team of Citizens Climate Lobby, which Yonatan helps lead, has written a letter to every member of Congress, urging members, quote, to stand firm on measures that will cut greenhouse gas emissions while strengthening communities, and to pass an ambitious Build Back Better budget as a first important step to putting us on a sustainable path. So, in coordination with the RAC, we have 3 weeks to make some serious noise for federal climate action and make sure that these measures are passed with full strength. You can call your members of Congress to amplify the voice of the RAC, talk to friends and family to do the same, and engage with groups such as Dayenu, Colorado Jewish Climate Action, and Citizens Climate Lobby, who are all encouraging action. Here at Har Hashem, our Dayenu Climate Action Group that Eliza Acker and I co-lead, you can raise your hand, Eliza, helped organize the first Colorado Jewish Climate Rally in August in Denver with active participation and support from Har Hashem members. So while the next few weeks are critical for federal action, this is ongoing work to effect change at every level. So our Dayenu group is working together with Colorado Jewish Climate Action in Denver to plan out public-facing events and educational opportunities on climate that will be going on throughout this year. So please look for an upcoming meeting of our Dayenu group coming up Thursday, October 21st, if you're interested in helping organize or contribute to these efforts. It is really through coming together and working together for change that we can build an arc big enough for us all, supporting each other as we confront climate change and work for a better future, as somewhat cheesily promised by the rainbow. So.